I'm here with the Master Gardeners. My name is Beth Hamaty, and we're going to be doing a little thing on seed collecting. How many of y'all have collected some seeds before? Almost everybody does. Gardeners love free stuff. We like free seeds. We like free plants. That's why we like to share. We like to give plants away. I have a motto, no plant left behind. I'm always taking in those poor little plants from the Lowe's discount rack and trying to bring them back to life. Sometimes I'm successful. Sometimes there was a reason they were on the discount rack, but that's okay. But today we're going to talk a little bit about seed collecting. When they first asked me to do this, I was like, I don't know that much about seed collecting. I just have collected some, and I look it up online and all that kind of stuff. And I said, no, but you've done a lot. I don't know what a lot is. So I kind of got online and started doing some research to put this program together. So if you look up there, it says we're going to talk about finding, collecting, and storing. And our general topics that we're going to be covering, maybe. Seeds come in different packages, so they look a little bit different depending on the plant. All right. Rules for collecting. There are some rules about collecting things, particularly in the wild. Are they ready yet? That's really important. Are those seeds ready to be collected? I'm going to walk a little bit because I'm a former school teacher, and if you don't walk around the room, bad things happen. So I'll walk around a little bit. Hopefully I'll not stray too far. Getting started, and then cleaning, labeling, and storage. So a couple of things just to know kind of off the bat is that not all flowers produce seeds. If it's a male flower, it will not produce seeds. How do you know it's a male flower? I have no earthly idea. Look it up. When you have a question, Google it or Bing it or whatever search engine you want to use. You can find a huge amount of information out there. Also, some seeds are not going to come true, especially if hybrids, and they may be sterile. So if it's a hybrid and you look on the plant tag from the plant you got, if it says something about a hybrid, you can kind of guess that it's probably not going to be exactly what you want. And lots of plants cross-pollinate. I had bought some tropical salvia. I had pink in the front yard and I had red in the backyard. And then the next summer, when it came up from seed, I had pink and red in the front yard and pink and red in the backyard. So there was definitely cross-pollination going on. My hollyhocks are never the same color every year, unless it's a color I'm not fond of, and then I'll have a bunch of those. But other than that, where the seed is located on the flower is a little bit different depending on the plant, but just think about where the center of the flower is, because that's where the seed's going to be found. Technically, a seed pod and a seed capsule are different. I did not know this until I did this research. But since I'm not a botanist, we're just going to be calling it a pod, because that's kind of what the terminology I have used. But if you hear that term capsule, understand that that's something that holds seeds as well. It's just a little bit different structure. Okay, so seeds do come in different packages. If you're talking about simple flowers, okay, petunias, lilies, poppies, you can see that flower, you can see the center of that flower, and that's where the seeds are going to be. So if you look at this petunia right here, there's the center of the flower. So if you take those petals off, you end up with this little thing right here. That's those little pieces of the stem that hold the flower to the stem. And then that seed capsule is right there in the middle. It's a little brown thing in the middle, and there's your seeds. And petunias were what kind of got us started on this whole question. We had some petunias coming up out of the Master Gardener demo beds, and they were trying to figure out where the seeds were coming from. They wanted to replant them and put them in some different places, and they kept looking at the plant and they couldn't figure it out. And it's small on a petunia, so it's right in there, and you'll see that the seeds are very small. So this is a lily over here. I'm going to move over here this direction real quick. This is a lily, and you can see that this is what would have held the petals on. There's your stem, and the capsule or the pod is right in the middle. Poppies are easier because they're big and they're right in your face. But again, it's the same thing. Here's your flower. The petals are here. This is the center. And then when the petals fall off, you get something that looks like these right here. So in composite flowers, like sunflowers, daisies, blanket flower, so on and so forth, the seeds are in the middle of the flower surrounded by the rays. So we look at a sunflower and we say, ooh, that's a pretty flower. But the reality of it is, it's not. These are the flowers. Each one of those little yellow things is a flower. And the rays, or the petals, are just there to direct the insects to those little flowers in the center. And they're going to come there because that's where the nectar is, that's where the pollen is. And then each of those little yellow things will produce a seed. Same thing with daisies, same thing with coneflowers. This is a tall aster. You can kind of see there's some fluff in there, but the seeds are right there. And same thing with blanket flower, gaillardia. So the seeds are going to be right in that center section. Okay, flowers that are on spikes, okay? Again, that's lots of little flowers all up and down that stem. So that's where the seeds are going to be. So here we've got larkspur. Or that may be delphinium, I don't know. And then you can see along the stem, you have your little seed pods. This is a standing cypress, which is a Texas wildflower. Sometimes you'll see it in the spring early summer when you're driving to cross plains. There's a lot along the road. And again, here you've got the stem. You had a flower attached here. This is the little mechanism that held the petals. The petals have now fallen off, and it's holding the seed pod, which was in the middle. It has little teeny tiny seeds. This is a salvia. I think that's Henry Dulberg. And again, you can see the seeds are in there. Same thing with liatris. It's all up and down here. And I have found that generally speaking, especially with salvias, is just grab the stem when it's dried out and you know that it's done and just pull them off. You know, kind of like just rip. Be sure you have gloves on. The salvias are not too prickly, but trust me, the liatris and the standing cypress definitely is. So if you don't know for sure how prickly that's going to be, just put on some gloves and you're in pretty good shape. And a lot of times when I do salvias, I don't worry too much about separating the seeds out. They'll eventually kind of fall out. So that doesn't cover every shape of flower. We didn't cover umbrels, which are, you know, when you have a head of flowers that are kind of like an umbrella. Again, they're all going to be in the center of all those little flowers. And if you just cut that umbrella off and you put it in a paper sack and shake it around, those seeds are going to fall out. Some seed pods will be really obvious. Poppies, yuccas, milkweed, of course, has that big old long pod on it. Others you're going to have to look a little closer. If in doubt, Google it. That's how I figured it out. I was really interested in collecting milkweed seeds. And I didn't know, I knew what the milkweed seed pod looked like. I just wasn't really sure when it was ready to go. Because for them, it takes a long time for those seed pods to mature, or those seeds in the pod to mature. So I started looking it up. And it gave me some really good pictures and gave me an idea of what I really needed to look for to make sure that those seeds were ready to go. And not too late, because when they pop, boy, they go everywhere. Okay, some rules for collecting. So there are some rules for collecting. These are important to keep in mind. One, if the plants are on your property, collect away. They're your plants. You can do whatever you want to. It's yours. If they're on someone else's property, ask permission. Okay? It's just polite. I know it seems kind of weird to walk up to people and knock on their door and ask them if you can have seeds from their plants. But if they have a fancy garden, if they're obviously gardening people, they'll be happy to tell you about their plants and share stuff with you. People will drive by my house, I'll be working in the yard, and they'll stop and they'll ask me about plants, and they'll ask me if they can have seeds, and I'm more than happy to share. If it's something that's putting out a lot of seeds. Sometimes I have to say, this is a new plant, I don't have a lot of it yet. Come back to see me next spring, I'll probably have more of it. Now, if you're in a public right-of-way, okay, this is public property along the highway, along a farm-to-market road, something along those lines, you can take seeds from public areas, but they'd recommend you not take more than about a tenth. Now, I've seen the numbers vary from about a third to a quarter to a tenth. And this is what I have found. When I started looking and studying about taking seeds in the wild, what I found was that we look at those flower fields and think there must be gazillions of seeds there, and there are. But Some of those are going to be eaten by insects. Some of those are going to be eaten by birds. Some of those are not going to be viable seeds for whatever reason. They didn't get enough nutrients in their little spot or whatever. And so if you end up taking a lot of seeds, you think, well, there's plenty here. You know, they'll come back in the spring. They may not. And that's why I went with the 10th. Okay? So if you're like out by Ranger Hill, okay, or right before you get to it, and you're looking at the milkweed pods, and you see, you know, count how many pods there are. There's 10 pods, take one. And then move down a little ways where you got another 10 pods. And that way you leave plenty for nature to redo its thing. And you don't have to worry about taking too many, okay? Now, if it's a public park, leave them to reseed. You could probably talk to somebody who maintains the park, and they might be willing to share. If it's at the zoo, for example, you might talk to one of their landscapers, and they might be willing to share a few seeds with you or something like that. But generally speaking, in a park, it belongs to everybody, and you want to make sure you're leaving enough for people to enjoy in the future. Okay, are they ready yet? This is the big question, because sometimes seeds may look like they're ready, and they're not really. Again, I'm going back to the milkweed because that's kind of where I had my experience. So if you've ever seen a milkweed pod, it looks like a horn. That's why they're sometimes called antelope horn. And when they first form, they're green. And they're about that big. And then they start to turn tan. And then they start to turn kind of khaki colored. And then they get a little bit darker brown, and then they get a little bit darker brown. And when they're ready to go, they're almost mahogany. I mean, they're really, really, really dark brown. And I kept watching these, and I kept looking at the pictures online. I was like, they're not ready yet, they're not ready yet. And once they get ready and they pop open, there's all sorts of fluff on them, and they go. So you really have to be careful on some of those seed pods that you get them at just the right time. Now, I've been told that some seed pods will dry after you take them off the plant. And I think that's probably true on some things like dill or herbs that you're growing in your garden, or maybe some of the flowers that you're growing in the garden. But you want to leave them on the plant as long as possible because those seeds are getting nutrients from the plant. And in order to make sure that they're good seeds and they're viable, you want to leave them as long as you possibly can. All right, so the flower's going to be dead. The petals are gone, okay? Seed pod or head should be tan or brown and completely dry. This is a really good place to go to Google, say look at it and kind of see what it's supposed to look like. Seeds themselves will usually be tan or dark brown. If the seed still appears green, they probably aren't ready. If they're light colored, like yellow or whitish looking, they're definitely not ready to go. So we've got some examples. I think that's a yucca. Looks like that looks familiar now. I can't remember what it is. I think it's a salvia. These are, of course, poppies. This is a milkweed seed. I don't know what some of these other seeds are. They're kind of greenish. I don't trust them myself, but they've got all sorts of stuff in there. So you want to make sure that they're definitely green, or the green's gone, they're definitely brown. Okay, so once you've located your seeds, you're ready to go, what do you need? Okay, so clean scissors or pruners. I actually carry a little pair of scissors in my car. I found out that with a 2-year-old grandson that might not be a great idea. It was just a napkin, but it was everywhere. Now it's in the glove box where he can't get to it, but I do carry something in the car. So if I see something, I can get it. Paper sacks or boxes to put seeds in, okay? Now, what happens if you don't have anything to put it in? Well, you can put it in plastic. I just wouldn't leave it in plastic for very long. I found some milkweed seeds the other day, and I just took a napkin, and I put them in the napkin, kind of in the fold, and I folded it up around the seeds and taped it with some painter's tape, and it'll be fine until I can get them home and lay them out to dry properly. Envelopes are great. Anything paper works pretty well. Like I said, you can use plastic, just don't leave them in there, and I'll tell you why in a second. You need pens for labeling your seeds, pens or pencil. Because trust me, you think, oh, I know what that seed looks like. I'm good. No, you'll forget. After a while, you're looking at so many seeds, you're like, I don't even remember what that is. And so you just throw it out and hope for the best. And usually it's fine, it'll be all right, but you kind of want to know what it is. Use alcohol or Clorox wipes to clean your scissors or pruners between plants. Okay? One, you do not want to spread any kind of diseases into the public, and you certainly don't want to bring any home. And so Clorox wipes are great, or any kind of little antiseptic wipe, just to clean it real quick. You can always take some hand sanitizer on a tissue and rub it a little bit. You just want to try to clean those germs off because you don't want to bring anything home. Okay, you can cut off the entire flower head or pod, put it in a sack. Try to choose seeds from the healthiest looking plants. Don't harvest seed heads or pods that have too many insects, are smaller than the rest, or they look really chewed up. There's a particular beetle that eats milkweed, and they get into that pod, and you can't always see them. And I brought the bags home, and I opened up the bag, and I had a bag full of bugs. Not happy. I'm not a big bug person. Kind of creepy. So be careful, that you're not bringing a bunch of little friends home. If you're out and find some seeds, and all you have to put them in is plastic, that's fine. Just put them in paper as soon as you can. All right. Did this stop working? Okay, good deal. All right. So, cleaning, labeling, and storage. The biggest threat to seeds is mold. So keeping them dry is very important. And I'll give you a really good example from this morning. So I did this program a month ago, for the Master Gardener's Saturday seminar. And I had collected a bunch of seed pods, and a bunch of my friends had collected different seed pods, and I had them in a plastic box. But I did not have the lid on the plastic box because I knew they were not dry. And so I took them home after my thing, and I put them on the table and left them there. And I didn't really think about them. Somebody, either my mom or my husband, not knowing, put the lid on that box. And when I opened it this morning, it was a box of mold. I don't know which seeds had not been completely dry, but by the time the mold got hold of it, everything was covered in mold. So I have no examples to show you. So try to keep them dry. Even when you think they're dry, sometimes they're not dry. Try to remove as much of the chaff, that's the leftover plant part, as you can. That tends to hold a little moisture, all right? If the seeds are really small and the chaff is dry, you don't have to get the tweezers out and remove every little bit of it. It's not that big a deal, but if you've got some chaff in there, you want to make sure it's as dry as the seeds are. You can place the seeds in their bags or in a shallow dish. So in a paper bag is fine. You can put them in a shallow dish. I find that sometimes the best place to put these to dry is on top of the refrigerator. Until my mom moved in with me, and her cat likes to be on top of the refrigerator, so I can no longer put them there. But if you can find a place that's out of the way, where it's going to be warm and dry, they should be good. Yep. Okay. You can hang entire seed heads upside down in a paper sack. They've done that here. And this works really well. This works really good for things like salvias. The liatris works pretty well that way. And you can let them just dry and they'll fall out over time. For seeds that have fluff, like milkweed and liatris, you can put the entire pod in a bag, throw some pennies in there, paper sack, roll it up and shake it really good. And what happens is those pennies will knock the fluff off of it. Then you can cut a little hole in the bottom and shake the seeds out. Do this outside, okay? I don't know if you know, but a little trivia. The fluff off of milkweed seeds during World War II was used in life vests to make them float. This stuff has a lot of loft. It's very fluffy, and it will get everywhere, including up your nose. If you want to keep it and do something with it, you can kind of wad it up in a little bundle and put it outside, and the birds will use it to line their nest. Hummingbirds like it in particular. I've never seen them come to my little wad of milkweed fluff, but I keep reading that people do. So, you can try it. Okay, when I'm labeling, I like to include specifically what type of seed, the year I gathered them. Now, lots of seeds are viable for multiple years, and if they're in the right conditions, they can be viable for a very long time. But I think this just gives you an idea of when it was picked and whether maybe it might not be as good as it was when you first got it. It also, if you give it to a friend, that helps them kind of determine, are you going to see 90% of the seeds germinate, or is it more likely to be a lower number? I like to put where I got them if it's not from my own yard, because I may want to go back there the next year. I may just want to go back and see if there's still milkweed there. I picked a lot of milkweed pods around Ranger, and I went back this last spring, and there's even more milkweed than there was before. So I know that I did not do damage to the environment because there's plenty there. If I'm giving it as a gift, I include some planting instructions. Now, most wildflowers, my planting instructions are broadcast them onto the ground. Because most wildflowers, that's exactly how they work. They fall off the plant, they're there on the top of the ground, and they'll germinate there usually in the wintertime after they've had some rain. The smaller the seed, the less soil it needs on top. Wildflower seeds usually need some sun in order to germinate. And that's a big problem when planting seeds, is lots of time people plant them too deep. Now you can store your seed packets in any container as long as they're kept cool and dry. Lots of people put them in glass. I think if I put mine in glass, I'd probably put some silica gel packets or something in there to try to absorb any extra moisture. But there are all sorts of things that you can do. These are all fancy things like you'd see on Pinterest. I don't always do Pinterest. So that's pretty much flowers. And they wanted me to cover fruits and vegetables. I don't grow a lot of fruits and vegetables. I grow for wildlife, and so I grow lots of native plants. But I did look it up and include this because I know that a lot of people, that's where they're going to save their money. They're buying a lot of plants, or they're buying a lot of seeds to grow their vegetable gardens, and being able to use those seeds could really save money. So for fruits and vegetables, the main difference is cleaning them. Okay, you just have to clean them a little differently. So beans and okra, let the pods dry on the vine, and then you remove the seeds. Okra is the seed pod. What we eat is the seed pod. Some people recommended having one plant that you're growing for seed, and then the rest you're growing to eat or use. I guess it depends on how much you're growing. If you're growing a lot, you might save several. But it's best to leave them on the plant to dry as long as you can. Carrots and leafy greens, let them bolt. That's when they send up a shoot with a flower on the top when it starts to get warm. And then you're going to treat them as any other flower that you're trying to get seeds off of. Just let them dry really, really good. Peppers, melons, any fruits that have large seeds, remove the seeds, wipe off any residue. That's important, is getting that residue off, and then letting them dry on a paper towel or a coffee filter until they're dry, and then let them dry some more. And I was trying to find how long do you let them dry, and someone said, a couple of months. It's not a bad idea. If it's all winter until next spring, that's even better. But let them dry as long as you can. Tomatoes, there's a technique for tomatoes. I did not know this, okay? But you're going to you remove the seeds, put them in a bowl of water, and let them soak for a couple of days. And then you're going to wash them through a strainer to make sure that the pulp has kind of soaked off. And if you feel like there's still pulp on them, you can do it again. But the idea is to get that residue off, because that residue is never really going to dry, and so you're going to end up with mold. Rinse them in a strainer, then lay them out on a dry paper towel or coffee filter. I've never tried coffee filters, but apparently they're supposed to be really good for drying seeds anyway. And you can plant the paper towel and the coffee filter right in the ground with seeds if you want to. Cucumbers, leave one plant for seeds. Leave the cucumbers on the plant until they turn yellow. So let them get really, really, really big. And slice through the outer part of the cucumber and then pry it open so you don't damage those seeds in the middle. And then basically you remove the pulp and do what you did with the tomatoes, which is let them sit in some water for a few days, try to rinse that pulp off, run them through this strainer, and rinse them really good. So just like flower seeds, you're going to want to let them dry thoroughly. You're going to put them in a container choice, label them, store them in a cool, dry spot until they're ready. So any additional information, YouTube has some great videos on this. You can Google, especially what do seeds look like, or what do the seed pods look like when they're ripe. What do the seeds of certain flowers look like? That'll help you a little bit too. Okay.